Welcome to Doves and Peace. I'm Bee Smith, and I'm going to begin our session by lighting this candle. Yeah. You can see that? I'm placing that over there. It's the tradition in Doves and Peace to begin with a prayer. And so mine is really a poem, but Samuel Beckett says that all poems are prayers. So we start with a poem. And it's invoking Bridget, who was a goddess first in ancient Ireland, and then she morphed into this abbess who became one of the patron saints of Ireland. And she is known for being a keeper of the flame, tending the flame. Brighid, be my kindling. Brighid, be my flint. Brighid, be my first spark. Let the kindling catch. Let the flame be right. Let me watch it jump high enough to last until first light. Brighid of the turf heap, Brighid of the coppiced ash, Brighid, now burn the willow mass. Let the spark burn hot, let the flame leap high. Let the spirit be filled with joy, opening out into the wide. Brighid, be beside this hearth. Brighid, burn the candle's wick. Brighid, a light in my heart. Bridget of Ireland. There's a lot that could be said about her, and the goddess who came before her. She is associated with inspiration as well as holy wells. So she encompasses the sacred flame and sacred water, both of them. And because of that, she is associated with both purification and going deep into liminal spaces. Purification by water, purification by flame. And interestingly, as abbess of Kildare, she was born in Faughart of a slave mother and a noble father. Some versions say he was a druid, others say that he was just a highborn clansman. He was wealthy, and they kept slaves in those times. And some tales say that eventually Bridget earned the freedom for both herself and her father. She was a dairymaid, but what she was most famous for was generosity. And she got kind of in hot water with her dad later on because she was forever giving away things for people, including one of his swords. The beggar came and said, could he have her cloak? And she had already given away her cloak. But she said, but I have this sword here, and, you can get something for that. Go and pawn it. And then you'll be able to get yourself. You can trade it. You can barter it. Dad was not impressed. And eventually she lobbied. She did not want to be married. There are a number of stories that she blinded herself so that she would be disfigured, so that she would become unattractive. In ancient Celts felt that if you were in any way disfigured, that you were not whole in some way. And then, you were less, not just physically attractive, but in terms of dowry price and things like that. But she was very, very clear that she wanted to set up a convent, that she wanted to gather together women who wanted to devote themselves to charity and prayer. And basically, she did it. And she managed to be enormously generous at the same time. She seems to have had a combination of political acumen, generosity, and native wit. One of the most famous stories is how she got the land in order to build her abbey in Kildare. Now, the King of Leinster had the Curragh, and the Curragh is where they have the national stud now in Ireland. It's in Kildare. And there was this lovely flat plain there that would have been an excellent location for her abbey. And so she went to this King of Leinster, who was a relatively recent convert to Christianity, and asked him if he would donate land for her abbey. And he sort of said, catch yourself on, woman, why would I want to be giving you all of this land? This is my best land, and then she said, would you give me the size of my cloak to build my abbey? Now, King of Leinster looked at this woman and thought that she'd obviously become like religiously deranged, and so he agreed. And he said, sure, go for it. And she had 4 sisters with her, and so she gave one edge of her cloak to one, and another corner to the other, and the other corner to the 3rd sister, and then basically she told them to run east, west, north, south. And basically this was the first miracle, because her cloak began to exponentially enlarge and enlarge and enlarge, and she had covered and they ran. They were healthy young women that she chose to do this, and they'd covered an acre. They were making time and space, and the king, of course, was absolutely astonished at what was going on, and then he didn't believe his eyes, and then he went through all of those sort of stages of grief. There was denial, then there was anger, then he began to bargain, and then he just said stop, and they did. And being a man of honor and a man of his word, he had to give that amount of land for her to build her abbey. And so she got her abbey, and at that abbey there were 19 nuns who kept a vigil over an eternal flame. Now, this is a real carryover from the pagan times when there was also a fire temple in Kildare. And the practice was that each of these sisters would tend the flame and not let it go out during their watch. And then on the 20th day, it was said that Bridget herself tended the flame. And then it began all over. And now all over the world there are any number of organizations with women and men who have a spiritual practice of tending Bridget's flame for one day out of 20. The other element of Bridget's tradition is that she is associated with holy wells, and the idea of sacred water and sacred space is another part of Bridget's story, because she's considered a symbol of liminality. Okay, what's liminality when it's at home? It's basically a threshold place, a place where you cross over, and where you're both in the underworld and the overworld. It's crossing borders and boundaries. What's interesting about St. Bridget of Kildare's story is that it is said that she was born at dawn, and that her mother was taken in labor pains very suddenly, and her mother was a dairymaid. She was leaving the dairy with full buckets, and that she was so taken in a labor pain that she had to drop the buckets, and that she had to hold the lintels, the door jamb, and that Bridget slid it into earth and was born there right on the threshold, and that when her mother came to bathe her, she was actually bathed in milk. from the buckets, because that was what she had available for her newborn. And so both the goddess Bridget and Bridget of Kildare are associated as being the patrons or matrons, since they're female, of cows, sheep, dairy maids, but also midwives. And this idea of midwifery and liminality is especially important in what I think is one of the most interesting legends about St. Bridget, in that she was said to have been the midwife for Mary in Bethlehem, that she came to her aid and helped bring Jesus into the world. Now, St. Bridget is said to be around 6th century Ireland, late 5th century. So we're talking maybe 500 years after the death of Christ. So literally speaking, this does not add up. However, if you see the world in terms of not just a divine masculine, but as a divine feminine, you then look at the idea of the birth of the Christ consciousness as being midwifed into the world by the divine feminine. And Bridget is one of the most accessible examples of the divine feminine. And what's interesting is that she has become incredibly popular amongst the goddess spirituality movement, amongst pagans, and with Christians as well. Some people regard her as a bit of a feminist icon because she created this abbey, and because she was an abbess, she was considered a bishop. There is this wonderful tale that Saint Mel was given lots of mead at table, and that when he came to do some ordinations, Bridget was there and she became ordained as well. So there's, people who are interested in the movement for the ordination of women are quite fond of her because of that story. But getting back to the holy wells being liminal spaces, another example. And in Ireland, holy wells are very popular. You'll often see what's called cluties next. And cluties are these rags. Sometimes they call them rag trees or wishing trees. But the tradition is that you would leave something behind, and that as it decomposes, your ailment would be going. But also, people do leave behind things in Thanksgiving. So the tradition has changed, as they always do. So we have a holy well not down far from us, down the lane where we live in Ireland, which is called Tubber. And Tubber actually means well in Irish. And this poem is called The Cure, because all holy wells are said to have a cure attached to them. The holy well stones have crumbled, mortar loosened by the gnarling ivy. I've gone on. The well water is choked, fallen leaves striking the mouth dumb. The water is wholly still down there, a foot below leaf mold. It can still cure. Strung around the ivy-covered tree, growing in and through the stones, the cluties, the teddy, the broken rosary beads, the chipped Blessed Mother, coins, empty powers as whiskey bottles, shoelaces. This pain is ancient, ongoing. Even when the stone walls fall, what is broken wants mending. What is hurt wants wishing well. The stones want mortar, and those stones that are no longer quite fit the pattern lie strewn beside, no longer part, nor yet apart. The mending has begun, but still there is this rubble, fallout, the bits left behind, there so long part of all that was this holy well. hearing the hurt, the petitions, bearing witness to the wishing well again. To stand so long half-fallen, nearly collapsing from this aggregate of grief, injury, want, loss, desperation. That too is part of the cure. Maybe more so, now the water has gone brackish, the clootie tree struggling against its ivy stays. This pain is ancient. There is nothing new. Yet here they sit still in the rain, as falling leaves swirl around the well, listening to the steady stream that feeds this well, its seasonal flood, its flow constantly feeding the cure. Now, I've spoken a bit about Bridget of Kildare, the abbess, the saint, but I'll speak a bit about the goddess who came before her, who basically is a symbol of abundance and healing. She is the patron of poetry and smiths. So considering that I'm B. Smith, and I'm a poet and I'm also a Reiki master, I kind of feel like she is the main woman for me in my life. Matthew Fox, and I know that Brother Sean has mentioned Matthew Fox on some of his podcasts. I recall listening to some recording from Sounds True saying that he talks about that Ireland still has a memory of the goddess because it's often said that Ireland is the body of the goddess. So this next poem is called I Am the Body of Ireland, which is about the goddess and the divine feminine in the land. I am the body of Ireland, the holy land of Ireland. My stones speak from the ages. Time runs as the Shannon River, rising and flowing, long and deep. I am the body of Ireland, the holy land of Ireland. I breathed you into being. I washed you, suckled you, warmed you at my heart. I am the body of Ireland, the holy land of Ireland. I am not just a green dream, but your flesh, your grandmother's bones, the blood beating in your breast. I am the body of Ireland, the holy land of Ireland. I am your temple and your fervent fire. Justice met at my sacred wells, the peace of your grazing cattle. I am the body of Ireland, the holy land of Ireland. I am your cure, your heart fully whole, your soul wholly free. I was watching a video last night with my partner, Tony Cookson, who's also one of the doves of the piece, and it was talking about how children today don't have interactions with nature. They don't go out and play and get dirty and muddy, and they have helicopter parents who are worried about people snatching them and whatnot. And it's interesting because of the environmental crisis that we have, that we don't interact with nature as much as we used to, and in that sense we perhaps have deprived ourselves of an intimate connection with the divine feminine, because quite often it is by being out in nature and in the land that many people have the first encounter with the consciousness, the possibility of the divine feminine. And interestingly enough, now Saint Bridget, the nuns, the Brigidine nuns, who are in Kildare, they reignited the eternal flame of Bridget after a AFRI conference. AFRI is an Irish group for peace, justice, and reconciliation, at a conference in, it was either 92 or 93. And they have kept the flame going in their convent ever since then. And but Bridget has now taken many things under her cloak, and that includes both justice, and it's interesting, courts in England and prisons are called the Brideswell, but also with reconciliation and for the preservation and conservation of the integrity of creation, which is nature and the environment. So Bridget has a very, very large cloak, and I'm going to conclude my podcast for today with one final poem or prayer, which is called Bridget's Mantle, which is Bridget's cloak. Lay me down upon your cloak, swaddle me, sing to me your secrets of always enough. Lay me down upon your cloak, wrap me snug, tell me a story, the miracle of always enough. Lay me down upon your cloak, rock me gently now, lay me down in the source of always enough. Thank you for visiting Doves for Peace. This concludes my first podcast with Doves of Peace, and I hope you will join us and the other presenters at other times. And until then, Bridget's blessings upon you. Thank you.